Dear children, in the previous class, in plus 2 English, chapter 4, the summit, the top of the mountain, written by Edmund Hillary, we have seen the glossary, then about author and substance of the lesson. Now we will go the word by word from the textbook and we will see at the end synonyms and antonyms from the hard words from the lesson. First, let us see the messages, the lines one by one from the textbook. The prose, the summit is a slightly adapted except from the ascent of Everest by John Hunt. Sir Edmund Hillary's own words tells how the summit of the Mount Everest was reached. On May 28, there were 6 men at camp 8 on the South Col. Edmund Hillary, Densing, George Low, Alfred Gregory, and the 2 Sherpas, Pemba and Ang Nyama. But Pemba was too ill to climb. The others, heavily laden, climbed that day to a height of 27,900 feet. Here, Hillary and Densing put up a little tent and watched their 3 companions go down the ridge back towards the South Col. As the sun set, Hillary and Densing crawled into the tent, put all their warm clothing and wriggled into their sleeping bag. Next morning at 4 a.m. on May 29th, they began to get ready for the climb. We started up our cooker and drank large quantities of lemon juice and sugar, and followed this with our last tin of sardines on biscuit. I dragged our oxygen sets into the tent, cleaned the ice off them, and then reached and tested them. I had removed my boots, which had become wet the day before, and they were now frozen solid. So I cooked them over the fierce flame of the furnace and managed to soften them up. Over our down clothing, we donned our windproof, and onto our hands we pulled 3 pairs of gloves, still silk, woolen, and windproof. At 6:30 a.m., we crawled out of the tent into the snow, hoisted our 30 lb of oxygen gear onto our backs, connected up to our mask, and turned on the valves to bring life-giving oxygen into our lungs. A few good deep breath, and we were ready to go. Still a little worried about my cold feet, I asked Densing to move off. Densing kicked steps in a long traverse back towards the ridge, and we reached its crest, where it forms a great snow bump at about 28,000 feet. From here, the ridge narrowed to a knife edge, and as my feet were now warm, I took over the ledge. The soft snow made a route on the top of the ridge both difficult and dangerous, which sometimes held my weight but often gave way suddenly. After several hundred feet, we came to a tiny hollow and found there are the two oxygen bottles left on the earlier attempt by Evans and Bödlin. I scraped the ice off the gauges and was relieved to find that they still contained several hundred liters of oxygen, enough to get us down to the South Pole if used sparingly. I continued making trial on up the ridge leading up for the last 400 feet to the southern summit. The snow on this face was dangerous, but we persisted in our efforts to beat a trail up it. We made frequent changes of lead. As I was stamping trail in the deep snow, a section around me gave me way and I slipped back through the 3 or 4 of my steps. I discussed with the Densing the advisability of going on, and he, although admitting that he felt unhappy about the snow condition, and finished with his familiar praise, just as you wish. I decided to go on. We finally reached the firmer snow higher up and then chipped steps up the last step slopes and cramponed onto the south peak. It was now 9 a.m. We cut a seat for ourselves just below the south summit and removed our oxygen apparatus, as our first partly full bottle of oxygen was now exhausted. We had only one full bottle left. Our apparatus was now much lighter, weighing just over 20 lb, and as I cut steps down of the south summit, I felt a sense of freedom and well-being. As my ice axe bit into the first step slope of the ridge, my high hopes were realized. The snow was crystalline and firm. 2 or 3 bowls of the ice axe produced a step large enough even for our oversized high altitude boots, and a firm thrust of the ice axe would sink in halfway up the shaft, giving a solid and comfortable belay. We moved on. At a time, I would cut a 40-foot line of steps, Densing belaying me while I worked. Then, in turn, I would sink my shaft and put a few loops of the rope around it, and Densing, protected against a breaking step, would move up to me. Then, once again, as he belayed me, I would go on cutting. In a number of places, the overhanging ice cornices were very large indeed, and then, in order to escape them, I cut a line of steps down to where the snow met the rock on the west. It was a great thrill to look straight down the enormous rock face and to see 8,000 feet below us the tiny tent of Camp 4 in the western CVM scrambling on the rocks and cutting handholds on the snow. We were able to shuffle past these difficult portions. On its east side was another great cornice, and running up the full 40 feet of step was a narrow crack between the cornice and the rock, leaving Densing to belay me as the best he could. I jammed my way into the crack. Then, kicking backwards, I sank in the spikes of my crampons deep into the frozen snow behind me and levered myself off the ground. Taking advantage of every little rock hold and all the force of knee, shoulder, and arms I could muster, I literally cramponed backwards up to the crack, praying that the cornice would remain attached to the rock. My progress, although was slow and steady, as Densing paid out of the rope, I inched my way upwards until I could reach over the top of the rock and drag myself out of the crack onto a wide ledge. For a few moments, I lay regaining my breath, and for the first time really felt a fierce determination that nothing now could stop us reaching the top. I looked a firm stance on the ledge and signaled to Densing to come up on. As I held hard rope, Densing wriggled up by the rock crack and finally collided at the top like a giant fish when it has just been hauled from the sea after a terrible struggle. The ridge continued as before, giant cornices on the right, step rock sloped on the left. The ridge continued away to the right, and we have no idea where the top was. As I cut around the back of one hump, another higher one would swing into view. The time was passing and the ridge seemed never ending. Our original just had now quite gone, and it was turning more into a grim struggle. I then realized that the ridge ahead, instead of rising, now dropped sharply away. I looked upwards to see a narrow snow ridge running up to the snowy summit. A few more whacks of the ice axe in the firm snow, and we stood on the top. My first feeling were of relief that were no more steps to cut, no more ridges to traverse, and no more humps to tantalize us with hopes of success. I looked at Densing. In spite of Balachva helmet, goggle, and oxygen mask, all encrusted with long eye cells that concealed his face, where there was no discussing his grin of delight as he looked all around him. We shook hands, and then Densing threw his arm on my shoulders, and we thumped each other on the back until we were almost breathless. It was 11:30 a.m. The ridge had taken us 2.5 hours, but it seemed like a lifetime. To the east was our giant neighbor, Makalu, unexplored and unclimbed. Far away across the clouds, the great bulk of Kanchenjunga loomed on the horizon. To the west, we could see a great unexplored range of Nepal stretching off to the distance. The most important photograph I felt was a shot down the north ridge showing the North Col and old route which had been made a famous by the struggle of those great climbers of 1920s and 1930s. After 10 minutes, I managed that I was becoming rather clumsy fingered and slow moving, so I quickly replaced my oxygen set. Meanwhile, dancing had made a little hole in the snow, and in the place various small articles of food, a bar chocolate, a packet of biscuit, and a handful of loans, a small offerings, index, but the least token gift to the God that devout Buddhists believe have their heart on this lofty summit. While we were together on South Col 2 days before, Colonel Hunt had given me a small crucifix which had asked me to take up to the top. I had to made a hole in the snow and placed it crucifix beside dancing's gift. After 15 minutes, I moved down off the summit onto the state, wasting no time. We cramped also our track and spurred by the urgency diminishing oxygen. We cramped cautiously over the rock traverse, moved one at a time over shaky and snow sections, and finally cramped up our steps back to the south peak. We were now very tired, moved down the two rivers cylindrical on the ridge, as we were only a short distance from the camp and had a few liter of oxygen left in our own bottle. We caught the extra cylinder down and reached a tent on its grassy platform at 2 p.m. With the last look, we came that we had served us so well. We turned downwards with dragging feet and ourselves to the task of safely descended the right to the south col. The time passed in the dream. Two figures came towards us and me, 100 feet above the camp. They were George Lowe and Wilfred Naico, laden with hot soup and emergency oxygen. Just short of the tent, my oxygen ran out. We had enough to do the job, but by no means too much. We crawled into the tent and with a sigh of delight collapsed into our sleeping bags while the tent flapped and shook under the perpetual south col gale. John Hunt, who led the expedition, states that it was an unforgettable day. they had climbed to the top, there were shouts of joy, handshakes, and hugs for the two heroes. Their happiness and pride showed how these men had shared in the achievement that was brilliantly concluded by dancing and hilarity. The adventure was over. The story of the ascent Everest is one of the comradeship and teamwork formed through the dangerous and the difficulties met and overcome together. Perhaps after the climbing of this great mountain, others will find their own Everest, for there are still many opportunities for adventure. Some are close at the hand, others are far away in the distant lands. Not all adventures are exciting, nor is adventure to be found only upon a mountain. There are Everest to be climbed in our everyday life, given the selfishness and resolve which enabled man to climb Everest. There is no height, no depth that the spirit of man, guided by a higher spirit, cannot attain. The lesson, the message from the lesson line by line is over. Then we will find out hard words, we will take out from the textbook, and we will find synonyms and antonyms for the words. Dear children, we will go for the collected hard words from the textbook, and we will find synonym and antonym for the words. The first word, cautiously. Synonym for this, carefully. Cautiously, carefully. Then collapsed. Synonym, fallen. Traveled, moved slowly. Concluded, completed. Crest, peak or a top. Descending, lowering. Devote, religious. Diminishing, reducing. Distant, far away. Synonym for cautiously for the words, cautiously, yes, carefully, good. Collapsed, next, fallen, very nice. Travelled, I could not hear, tell me louder. Yes, moved slowly, it's okay, good. Concluded, the last, tell me louder, somewhat louder. Yes, completed, concluded, completed. Crested, it's open choice, any one of you can tell me. Yes, peak or top, good. Then next, descending, anyone? So lowering, good, nice. Devote, tell me, yes, religious. Diminishing, reducing. The last, distant, any one of you? That is far away. Now for the same words we will go for antonyms. For cautiously, carelessly. Cautiously, carelessly. Collapsed, refreshed. Then craved, raised, increasing. Then concluded, then commenced. Concluded word for antonym for that, commenced. Then crested, base. The descending, antonyms, ascending. Then devote, antonym, faithless. Then diminishing, antonym, increasing. Distant, antonym, near. Shall I recall you once again? Could you tell me the antonym for the words? Cautiously, good. Carelessly, collapsed, refreshed, good. Travelled, raced, good. Then concluded, next, commenced, good. Crust, base, nice. Descending, ascending, good. Devote, faithless. Diminishing, anybody? Antonym, increasing, good. Distant, near. Now, let us see both synonym and antonym for the same words. Cautiously, synonym, carefully, antonym, carelessly. Collapsed, synonym, fallen, antonym, refreshed. Then travelled, synonym, moved slowly, antonym, raised. Then concluded, means synonym, completed, and antonym, commenced. Then crest, meaning peak or top, antonym, base. Descending, synonym, lowering, antonym, ascending. Devote, synonym, religious, antonym, faithless. Then diminishing, synonym, reducing, antonym, increasing. Distant, synonym, far away, antonym, near. The next word, dragged. Synonym for dragged, this pulled. Enormous, very synonym, very large. Exhausted, synonym, worn out. Firm, hard. Frequent, synonym, regular. Hoisted, synonym, lifted. Protected, synonym, guarded. Then sink, synonym, dip. Steady, synonym, firm. Could you tell me once again the synonym for the words dragged? Anyone? Yes. Pulled. Good. Enormous. Next. Good. Very large. Exhausted. The next. Worn out. Good. Firm. The next. Hard. Very good. Frequent. The last. Last by. Regular. Good. Hoisted. Open your mouth. Tell me louder. Yes. Lifted. Good. Hoisted. Lifted. Good. Protected. The middle by. Guarded. Good. Sink, the front girl. Dip. Good. Steady. First bench. Any one of you. Firm. It's okay. For the same words, we will find the antonyms. Dragged. Pushed. Enormous, little. Exhausted, energetic. Firm, soft. Frequent, rare. Hoisted, dropped. Protected, unprotected. Sink, float. Then steady, antonym, unsteady. Dear children, once again I will remember you, I will ask you the questions. Tell me the answer for my questions. The same way how you have told the answer for synonyms, in the same way tell me the answer for antonym also. Dragged, first girl, first bench. Pushed, good. The next girl, enormous, little, nice. The next girl, exhausted, energetic, very nice answer. Firm. The next boy, soft, good. Frequent. The last boy, the second bench, rare, nice. Hoisted, the last bench, last bench, the last boy. Hoisted, dropped, good, protected, first bench, girls, unprotected, nice. Sinker, the last bench in the right side, the last boy. Floated, good, tell me louder. Then steady, it's a common, it's an open choice. Unsteady, right, good. Now I will conclude by telling synonym antonym for the words again. For dragged, synonym pulled, antonym pushed. Then enormous, synonym very large, antonym little. Exhausted, synonym worn out, antonym energetic. Then firm, synonym hard and antonym soft. Then frequent, synonym regular, opposite rare. Hoisted, synonym lifted, opposite dropped. Then protected, synonym guarded, opposite unprotected. Sinker, synonym dip, antonym float. Steady, synonym firm and antonym unsteady. Dear children, watch the full video. Apart from watching the full video, have your textbook material with you. Find out the hard words and find the meaning apart from given in the glossary. Refer the dictionary, find out words and meanings for all the words given in the textbook. Have more vocabulary in you and write the story of the lesson in one own words by using the vocabulary that you have collected from the dictionaries, and answer for synonyms and antonyms. And as we have no time now for a short question and a paragraph, if time permits, we will discuss in the next class about the short question and paragraph. Then go through the lessons and read well and get the message in your store in your mind and reproduce it whenever it is required. Thank you to all.